With the pursuit of the Olympic Games in 2024, people in Boston are paying more attention to the future in transportation. But even without the Olympic factor, officials in local communities have been trying to catch up with a backlog of repairs, along with needs for improvement and expansion. And a statewide coalition of groups known as Transportation for Massachusetts recently offered some pointers on transportation to Governor Baker. Our guest is from one of the groups, a staff attorney with the Mass Public Interest Research Group, or MASSPIRG. We'd like to welcome Kirstie Pecci. Thank you very much for being with us.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Very nice to be here.
Kirstie, these groups have different angles on transportation. So first of all, what about the MASSPIRG angle here?
So MASSPIRG, the name kind of says it all. We're a public interest research group. We work with grassroots folks across the state on grassroots issues, things that they care about for the public interest. Many times our problems are framed as a special powerful interest blocking good government or good measures happening, and then we try and represent those folks and help them out with that. We have 13 chapters at 13 different colleges across the state. We have campus organizers who work there. So we have that. We're also training new organizers and new citizens coming up, and that's another important part of our work. And then thirdly, we actually do a lot of research, and we have a lot of people on staff at our larger U.S. PIRG, our federation, because we have over 35 states where we have a presence. And those specialists help us out from the federal offices, and also people like myself working in staff in our Boston office and other offices across the country who specialize in transportation, taxation, antibiotics resistance, various issues across the whole country.
Well, as the governor takes office, the messages he's getting already, people want more growth, they want more access to affordable housing, and they don't want to pay more money for the gas tax. So how do you handle that and meet transportation needs?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head. You've gotten to the heart of the issue already. Transportation, like everything else, costs money. And you're correct, people want that growth in transportation services. Right now, millennials, the generation that are coming up, we've done a lot of research on this. We have a number of reports that you can find on our website, masspirg.org, that show they don't want to drive. They want to walk or bike, be able to get to their jobs that way. They want to use public transit. They either can't afford a car or they don't want to put their money into that part of the system. And they're also very reliant and very tied in with their phones, and they'd rather be on a bus using Wi-Fi than driving themselves to work. So the need is definitely there. And we can see that because the last 8 years there's been a decrease across the entire country in vehicle miles traveled by individuals. So we're seeing that need and that desire, but yet, as you said, we just had a defeat at the polls that people did not want to have an indexing of the gas tax. I think that was because, honestly, it's a complex issue, and folks don't always necessarily tie together the fact that their services are going to cost them money, and they need to fund them somehow. But there are a lot of good ways to fund transportation services, and there are a lot of good ways to improve our system that aren't necessarily going to cost more money. So we have to keep slogging away and finding those answers.
Chris, I guess this also is about priorities. What's the message from the coalition about that?
Well, that's we in our the new MassDOT and the document that we just published, that Transportation in Massachusetts, the coalition published. The first message is you have to prioritize. You need to get as much bang for your buck as is possible, and the way to do that is to set up a system that measures how much each project is going to achieve the goals and values that we as a Commonwealth have set for ourselves. Equity, preventing climate change, serving as many people as possible for as little money as possible, and making sure that we're not creating redundant services, but instead getting out to parts of a state where they don't have services. So that is the first step, to make sure that there's a system in place that evaluates each project. So before we hair off and build something new, we're making sure that everyone's on the same footing, that we're not building something that isn't going to achieve the very goals that we've set out. And that's actually happening right now. There's a project selection criteria board that has been set up by the 2013 Transportation Finance Act. So if that continues, that important work should help us with that goal.
I want to have you go a little deeper into the financing part here, because there is a wish list, projects that have been authorized, but the state also has limits on how much capital spending it can do. So,
right. Well, to backtrack a little bit, and you can stop me if I'm going into too much detail. I don't want to get into too many numbers because I think it gets boring.
No.
Yeah, but in 2007, a bipartisan council looked at the transportation problem and said it's $15 to $19 billion to bring our system into a state of good repair. We have a fantastic system in Massachusetts. We're very, very lucky. Most states don't have tunnels and subways. You can't build them. The labor and the materials costs, it's just prohibitive now. So we're very lucky in Massachusetts to have an old, fantastic, really well-developed system. But it's in a terrible state of disrepair right now. It really needs a lot of work. So to bring that system so that it's modern, safe, and actually working, not any gold-plated system, not new projects, but just to bring it into a state of good repair, we're talking about $1 billion a year for the next 10 years. And in 2013, the act that was passed only provided about $600 million a year, and that was with the gas tax indexing. So the problem that we face is about a $500 to $600 million deficit in our transportation system to make that system a safe, modern, equitable system that provides the services that people are clamoring for.
Now, what has happened in some other states is this conflict between transportation needs and spending. It got so bad you almost had to go to some kind of a shock treatment where you either had to propose these outrageous fare increases or tolls or something.
Right.
Do we have to do that?
I would not say we have to do anything outrageous. And in fact, we've tried to, in the 2013 Transportation Finance Act, we tried to make sure that nothing of that sort would happen, in that we don't want huge increases in fares so that then people stop using the MBTA. So they've actually capped how much it can be increased. It's 5% every 2 years. So we've tried to make sure that doesn't happen. But at the same time, people do have to pay the piper. And there are smart, good ways of doing that. Open road tolling is one of them. A gas tax that increases over time with an index is another one. But those aren't the only solutions. Vehicle miles traveled systems, VMT systems, are another one. We have a bill that's going to be filed this week. Transportation for Massachusetts is filing. Is asked to be filed, and that there are legislators who are filing it. Excuse me. And what that would do is look at, can we say how many miles have people traveled and put a small fee on that? And that way the users of a system are paying for the system. Anytime that you can connect the use of the system with paying for the system becomes more efficient, it's more responsive to those users, and it's more equitable. So that's another, and then there's another bill that we're supporting that I think is a great idea also, and that's a regional transportation finance. And this has worked in other parts of the country, like Colorado, where projects that are localized projects that would really benefit the locale are voted in and paid for by local taxes by either municipalities or regions. So a number of municipalities could band together and pass a tax. Different types of taxes are on the table right now. This is still in the formula state. And then that would then pay for, say, local bus service or other services that region wants. So there are creative ways to pay for transportation services, and they all pay off. Transportation, public transportation and better walking and biking benefit all of us hugely.
Explain how huge, especially biking and walking. Why is that huge now?
Well, there's a few different ways. Really, you can pick what you care about, and I can tell you a way in which it's going to benefit you. If you're concerned about America's health, for instance, the obesity epidemic, diabetes, walking and biking, or even using public transit and walking at the end and the beginning of that trip, increase people's health by a huge measure almost immediately when they change from driving in their car to either walking, biking, or taking public transit. So if you care about health, that's important. If you care about the environment, climate change, as soon as we get out of single occupancy vehicles, as soon as we stop taking a car with one person in it everywhere we go, we immediately reduce climate changing gases significantly. We save a lot of oil. It makes a huge difference in the quality of the air we breathe, and saves a lot of lives as far as asthma and other environmental impacts on health. So that's another way. And then if you're looking solely at the economics, dollars spent on transit and walking and biking immediately turn into economic gain. There was a study in Europe where they looked at for each dollar that was spent on public transit, what were the returns financially? And they took only a couple of different ways of measuring those returns. They looked at infant death and they looked at asthma impacts. And those dollars were immediately paid for just by measuring those indicators alone. And there are a lot of other indicators that also show that. Another thing too, back to the millennials point that I made earlier, if we want to retain all these great college students, if we want students here at BU and other great schools to stay in Massachusetts, we have to give them what they want. And what they want is to be able to live in a community where they can walk and bike and take public transit to work. So, to retain our talent in Massachusetts, and that's one of the greatest strengths that we have, we need to make sure that we invest in our public transit system and in walking and biking in complete streets.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
From MASSPIRG, Kirstie Pecci. We'll have more news in just a moment.